What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome to my review for A Quiet Place Part 2. This is the first movie I've seen in my theater since it reopened after the pandemic. I know the pandemic's not technically over yet, but the theater's open, so that's what matters to me, folks. And I was very excited for A Quiet Place Part 2, even when it got delayed a few years ago. I saw the first A Quiet Place with my wife, and I saw this one with her as well. She's not the biggest fan of horror films. And I am not a fan of the stupid horror films, as I call them, where you've got the idiot kids who find a house that hasn't been lived in 30 years and it's abandoned. There's moss growing around it and they all get killed by some serial killer in a hockey mask. I'm not a fan of those with dumb characters and dumb plot points. But I love a smart horror movie. And the first A Quiet Place was magnificent. I thought John Krasinski, Jim from The Office, he blew me away with how well his directing was, and it's pretty much the same in this movie. It's also directed by him. This is a direct sequel, minus a flashback scene, which kicks off the movie, and I was on board, man. You could tell the suspense was building, and when it hit hard. And the directing in the movie is amazing. The sound, the score, you can hardly hear a pin drop in my theater, minus the first jump scare where some kid behind me went, whoa! And that was the only time that anyone made a sound in the theater. I didn't even want to crunch my popcorn too loud because of the way this movie was filmed and directed. I felt like I was in this world. And every performance in the movie is pretty much amazing. But the standout is the daughter of John Krasinski and Emily Blunt's characters, she had a lot to do in the first movie, but this is her movie. She is so good in it. I don't remember the actress's name, but I should, but I think we will because she's amazing. If this movie was coming out during, say, October or November, then I think she would be nominated for an Oscar. It won't happen because it's a summer movie, and typically, it's not impossible, but that usually doesn't happen. But she's incredible. Cillian Murphy also, who I thought, for whatever reason, because I only watched the first trailer, I thought he was the villain in the movie. He's not. This is probably my favorite performance I've ever seen from him. He's so good in the movie, and his character is just awesome. Emily Blunt is really good. I did kind of think she was a little bit underused, to be honest. But hey, it's Emily Blunt. You know, she's good in almost everything, minus the Huntsman Winter's War movie that came out a few years ago. But we'll give her a pass on that one. Everybody has a bad day. The sound, the editing, and particularly the score, the music, was so intense, and I was so locked in. It did the thing that a lot of horror films do, where it builds and builds and builds. The sound builds, and you know something's about to happen. And maybe it does right then, maybe it doesn't. But when it happens, it gets you. There's one scene in particular that my wife grabbed my hand and I thought she was going to break it. She was so scared in a good way. This is what a horror movie needs to do. And again, it uses a lot of jump scares. It really does. But they're done so well that you don't mind that they're using jump scares. As far as problems I have with the movie, it's very few. I will say there's one kind of subplot that happens right towards the end of the second act that I didn't think needed to be in the movie. I thought it, and again, without giving anything away, no spoilers, it kind of turned into The Walking Dead for a minute. And honestly, a cross between The Walking Dead and The Last of Us, and I don't think it needed to be there. I understand why it was because of, honestly, a line that was given earlier in the film. And I was like, wonder what that means. Well, this references that, but I just thought with the grander scheme of what was going on in the story, I thought this particular scene felt out of place. And maybe if you see the movie, you'll agree with me, maybe you won't, but for me, it just didn't quite work. And the only other con I would say that I have with the movie is, again, this is something that other people see this and they may not feel the same way at all, but I didn't love the ending. And the reason I say that is because it just ends like out of nowhere. You don't expect it to cut to the credits, and when it does, you're like, huh? But what happens next? That said, I absolutely think there's going to be a part 3. I think there should be. I haven't done any research. I haven't read any reviews by John Krasinski or anything. I don't know if that's part of his plan. But the way this film ends, I have to believe there is going to be A Quiet Place Part 3. And I can't wait for it. So on my 10-point scale, I'm going to give this movie an 8 out of 10. I would recommend you go see it. Again, as a new parent, you know, there's these people. Emily Blunt's character, she gets through this after having just given birth to a baby. My wife and I, my wife did the birth and I was just there. And the fact that they lived through this is kind of crazy, even though I know it's a fictional story. But I will say, as a new parent, there are a couple scenes in the movie that might be somewhat upsetting to parents. And for young kids, I'd say they're not ready for this movie. I'd say teenagers, it's fine. You know, it's rated PG-13, and I think it absolutely should be. This movie's proof that you don't have to make a horror movie rated R for it to work, because this movie works great. Pretty much, again, minus the little nitpicks I said, and again, they're really minor because I really enjoyed the movie. But yeah, I would recommend going to see A Quiet Place Part 2 in the theater. Support movie theaters, because streaming's cool and all, but there's nothing like being in an auditorium, eating that movie theater popcorn and Coke or Pepsi, whatever you drink, and having that theater experience. So definitely check out A Quiet Place Part 2. And thanks so much for supporting my channel. I hope to see you next time. Take care. Bye.